Well, here's a video I didn't think I'd ever end up making. So, I did a video a while back about Yuki Makoto, the protagonist of the Persona 3 movies. And I covered the first two movies and the benefits that come from being a voiced MC rather than a mute hands-in-pockets coffee addict. And just for the record, because I never really made it clear in the last video, I do want to say that while I think the movies do a whole lot of things better than the games, I do think the games are a more complete experience. Like, the movies just aren't anywhere near as good without the games to give them some much needed context. But anyways, I thought I had covered all I needed to in that video. I did the first two movies, I didn't spoil everything, but still got to cover some very interesting points that I wanted to talk about. But then, recently, I got sick. Like, confined to my apartment for 2 weeks, unable to move from my couch sick. So, between the constant drowsiness and coughing up enough phlegm to make a hagfish jealous, I had a lot of time on my hands. So I ended up rewatching all 4 movies. And well, wouldn't you know it, I kinda wanna talk about them again. So, what the heck? Let's continue on from where we left off in the last one, and let's talk about the many differences of Yuki Makoto in the Persona 3 movie quadrilogy. So, if you'll recall, the second movie ended with Shinji, going to visit the giant egg that lives in the moon. And the third movie begins about a month after that, right into the middle of the Hang It Man boss fight. Which means Makoto has had a month to cope with Shinji's death, and he hasn't coped well. He seems to have largely come to the conclusion that if having friends brings this much pain when you lose them, it's not worth having friends. To make matters worse, Pharaohs, the little boy in the striped pajamas who lives in his head, decides that this is the best time to disappear. I mean, we all know why he does this, but to Yuki, it's just another painful loss. So, Yuki basically reverts to how he was at the beginning of the first movie. A man who coats himself in a protective shell of indifference. A man who can't get hurt because he doesn't care about anything. But here's the interesting thing about this movie. Everyone else in the C Squad, with the exception of Agus and Koromaru, at one point goes through the same thing Yuki is going through. Ken and Akihiko are still dealing with the death of Shinji, Mitsuru's father is killed by Itsuki, which in turn brings back memories of Yukari losing her own father. Fuka's best friend moves to a new town, which isn't quite as heavy as what some of the other characters are going through, but it's still a form of loss. And Junpei goes through a relationship that I can't really talk about without tears welling up in my eyes. But here's the kicker. Each and every one of them come to the same realization at different points over the movie. And that is...
無理だよ、そんなの。嫌いになんてなれるはずない。お父さんの意志を継ぎたいから。意志を継ぐ。それが私に、私たちにできることでしょ。
大切なものは失ってから大切だったと気づく。それでも大切なものが何もない空っぽな人間よりはずっといい。たとえ傷ついたとしてもな。
俺さ、結局こんなになっちゃったけど、これだけは言えるよ。俺は千鳥に会えてよかった。千鳥を好きになれてよかった。
The point here is everyone comes to the realization, opposite of Yuki's, that even though loss is painful, the fact that you had something that hurt to lose to begin with is important, and you should be glad you had it. And well, Yuki is there to witness each of his friends coming to this realization, and is able to slowly himself start to realize that they might be right. But it's not quite enough. There's still something missing. One little push Makoto needs in order to escape his self-made prison and accept his loss for what it is. And for that, we need Ryoji. Now in the games, Ryoji is... there? You have a few events here and there where he's present and allusions are made that he and the protagonist are somewhat close, but like, you never really do anything that special with him. You don't have like a social link or anything, at least not if you're a guy. I mean, we, the audience, know why he's there, but the protagonist? He's another kid in class. But, in the movies, Makoto and Ryoji's blossoming friendship is really played up. Ryoji is possibly the only character who is able to see Yuki for who he really is. An outwardly awkward loner with no social life, but deep inside actually someone rather kind, trying to purposely push everyone around him away to keep both himself and them from being hurt. And so, Ryoji decides that he's going to be the one who breaks Makoto out of his shell. The one who really gets in there and makes him realize that avoiding everyone around him isn't a healthy way to live. And as a result, by the end of the third movie, Makoto, through both observing his friends and sees and his direct friendship with Ryoji, is finally able to come to the realization that while loss may be painful, the fact that you had something so beautiful that could cause you such pain is in of itself important. And that is when Persona 3 decides to put that very theory to the ultimate test. As anyone who's played the games could tell you, this is where we find out Ryoji is in fact death. Like the literal concept of death, come to answer humanity's wishes with the destruction of every living being on the planet. And he's also here to give you an ultimatum. You all are gonna die. It is impossible to avoid, resistance is futile. You have two options available to you. Struggle in vain and die, constantly afraid that doomsday is looming over you, or kill Ryoji's physical body and have everyone still die, but in a more blissfully ignorant sort of state. So, the fourth movie is, in my mind, far and away the most brilliant of the four. Not necessarily because it's the best one, but because I think it's the one that most improves upon the concepts from the original game. In the game, the month of December was, long? It was pretty bleak, but for the most part it was just kinda watching each character come to their own realization that they'd rather fight than give up and die peacefully. It wasn't bad by any means, but the movie gets a point across that the game was never really able to. And that is, the movie is fucking depressing. We are forced to watch as each and every one of the characters we've come to care about over the course of the story breaks. They are presented with the fact, the cold hard truth, that they are going to die. And they all deal with this in very different ways. Akihiko and Mitsuru possibly handle it the best. They throw themselves into work. They look into Strega or old research papers from Akutsuki, but really all they're doing is just trying to keep their minds busy, trying to make it so that they don't have to think about the approaching end. Ken locks himself in his room, rarely ever leaving. His whole outlook becomes hollow and empty. Fuka ponders if it's truly right of her to tell her friend that death is coming. Aigis is mostly out of commission after the fight with Ryoji, but begs Makoto to please accept his proposal, kill Ryoji, and live the last few months you have left in peace. Junpei gets in fights with random street thugs, perhaps hoping that he could end this all early. Yukari stops eating entirely, and her malnutrition gets so bad that one night she starts to hallucinate. She hallucinates that her persona loses control, much like Shinji's had, and in its wrath, it tries to kill her. The experience is so shocking that she is rendered unconscious due to hyperventilation and sent to the hospital. And that leaves Makoto, who has to sit there and watch as the people he cares about slowly but surely break. There are two rather powerful scenes with him. One with Akihiko and one with Junpei. And both are kind of about tying up loose ends, that they don't want to leave anything hanging. Akihiko is trying to pay him back for Operation Babe Hunt over the summer, and Junpei is trying to apologize for an accusation he made earlier in the movie. But both these scenes have a very important undertone. These two characters fought tooth and nail to get here. They've both lost people incredibly important to them along the way. They've both sworn never to give up, no matter what adversity faces them. And yet, as they sit here, trying to make sure they don't have any guilty conscience left as death approaches, one fact is clear. They've both accepted that they're going to die. As Makoto ponders his options, which choice he should make when Ryoji returns on the 31st of December, he adopts a stance that, at this point, has become iconic to Persona 3 as a whole, and has a very different meaning in the real world. And here is where the movies pull off their most brilliant change from the original games.
まるで悪夢にうなされたような顔をしていらっしゃいますね。ごきげんよう。
They make the dates with Elizabeth part of Yuki Makoto's character growth. That's right, when he's at his lowest and all seems lost, who should show up but a character who has done exactly nothing in these movies so far? Elizabeth. She asks Makoto to show her around the real world. She's never had a chance to explore it after all. She's spent her entire life in the Velvet Room. But she's heard so many tales of the wonders of the modern world. So, that's exactly what Yuki does. You visit Polonium Mall, go dancing at the club, eat some takoyaki at the takoyaki stand, play on the playground, check out Makoto's dorm building, and even visit the very bridge where this whole mess began. And through Elizabeth's childish, yet weirdly philosophical view of the world around him, Makoto is slowly but surely able to see what it is he forgot. Everything that happened this past year. The good, the bad, the clubs he joined, the jobs he got, the pastimes he took part in, the foods he ate, the friends he lost, the friends he made. Does Makoto really want to forget it? No, he doesn't. Because those memories are just as important as his own life. They have made him who he is today. And as he thinks that, all across town, his friends and comrades all begin to come to the same realization. No matter the consequences, even if they suffer more because of it, even if it truly is impossible to overcome, as Ryoji says, the only option worth believing in is to fight for who they are right now. And so, the movie comes to an end, much in the same way that the games did. You fight Nyx, discover the meaning of life, defeat Nyx, prevent the fall, spring arrives once more, the world turns white in Agas's lap, Kimi no Kyoku starts playing, and you start crying like a newborn because that song is so fucking good. And despite the bleak tones that are happening here, since we know what's happening to Door-kun over here, it is possibly one of the most hopeful and uplifting endings I've ever seen.
輝いて見えるよ